Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I am so happy you're here. This is the place where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Before we dive in, I have to say a few podcaster things. Don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you do your listening, and subscribe to the Libby app YouTube channel if you want to catch those full video episodes. They are beautiful if I do say so myself. So check out Libby app YouTube channel. If you're listening right now, the link to the YouTube page is in the episode description. If you love what we're doing, consider leaving a 5-star review on your podcast platform or commenting on the video you're watching on YouTube. These engagements really help more folks find the show, and I really appreciate it. All right, enough of that. Let's get into today's episode. Today, we are writing you library love letters. These are books that celebrate the joy of libraries and books and reading. In segment 1, I'm joined by Terah Shelton Harris, an author and former librarian who now writes upmarket fiction with bittersweet endings, including One Summer in Savannah. Eva Jurczyk, a writer and librarian living in Toronto. Jenn McKinlay, the award-winning New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly bestselling author of several mystery and romance series, who lives in sunny Arizona. And PJ Nelson, the pseudonym of an award-winning actor, dramatist, professor, and novelist, among many other professions, who has done just about everything except run a bookstore. As they all share the process of going from reading to writing, and in segment 2, our guest hosts will join me to give you book recs for your TBR written by librarians, or they take place in a library or a bookshop. So all sorts of good things to come in this episode. So with that, let's turn the page and dive on in. Well, welcome everyone to today's episode. It's a true love letter to libraries, and I am so incredibly grateful to have these authors whose paths have been closely tied to books, reading, and community in unique ways. Joining me, we have Terah Shelton Harris, Eva Jurczyk, Jenn McKinlay, and PJ Nelson. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
Oh, it's so wonderful to see you all here. For those listening, I will have you go around the room if you want to do an intro. Just give us your name, your current release, and maybe a little bit about yourself if you want. I have to now round robin pick. Oh gosh, this is the hardest part of my job, which is really saying something. Terah, we'll start with you. My Zoom squares will be my guide.
Okay. Hello, I'm Terah Shelton Harris, and I'm the author of 2 books, One Summer in Savannah and Long After We're Gone. And I am a former librarian, having been a deputy director and collection development library for 18 years before I retired to write books full time.
Which is so exciting. I got to watch that happen, so it brings me extra joy. Jenn, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Jenn McKinlay. I was also a librarian, did everything from government documents and law to children's, doing the outreach, the puppets, all that good time. I'm also I'm an author, obviously, about 60 books now, and mysteries, romance, fantasy. Also left librarianhood, retired early to be a full-time author. Amazing. And my probably the reason I'm here is because one of my mystery series is a Library Lovers mystery series, and my first fantasy is set in a library. So yeah, a lot of library love here.
Oh, we love
Right.
to see it. Eva, I'll come to you next.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Jurczyk. I'm still actively a librarian. I'm the head of humanities collections at the University of Toronto Libraries. So I buy books for a living. I'm not quite ready to retire from that dream job yet. And I'm the author of 3 mysteries, The Department of Rare Books and Special Collections, That Night in the Library, and coming out in just a couple of weeks, 640 to Montreal.
Look at that. How does it feel to still be in the trenches, so to speak?
You know what? It feels pretty good. If you have to have any sort of day job as a writer, this isn't a bad one.
That's right.
Not at all. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I imagine it's a pretty good place, especially since you get to do the collection development, buy the books. And PJ, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Philip DePoy. I have 20 books under that name, and I've just started a new series, the Old Juniper Bookshop series, under the name of PJ Nelson. It's my initials and my wife's middle name. I have actually a graduate degree in library science and media from 1973 It was actually a degree in performance art, but the library department at Georgia State University was the only one that would let me design my own degree. So I actually do performance art pieces in libraries sometimes. And I now have I see 25 books.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
exciting. And don't you love it when a plan comes together? Oh, look
Seriously.
at that. You're all library involved one way or another.
But I'll tell you this, Eva, we are slacking with the books, girl. We gotta
I know, right?
we gotta crank it up. Good.
Yeah.
I think you need to consider that quality counts more than quantity.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Sarah.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
But good things all around. I don't think anyone's ever mad at either a fat stack of books to dive into or a handful of really just like thick, thoughtful. I mean, Terah, you're always making me cry when I finish one of your books. Eva, I am filled with all sorts. Like, you all just craft things that make me go, and this is why you're doing this. Like, no matter
Right.
what. But I think to start us off, to all of you, what do you most love about libraries? Working in them, having worked in them, designing programs for them. Anyone who feels moved to start first, I'm completely shirking my responsibilities. Whoever's got a response, what brings or inspires your love of libraries?
I was raised by a librarian. My mom was a librarian. I met my husband in a library. He's still a librarian. He's
Wow.
also a musician. So we had that perfect connection of wannabe writer, wannabe musician, both working in libraries. So I love, and I've worked in them all. I was the head librarian for the Desert Botanical Garden. I've worked in a hospital library, a school library, public library, Phoenix Public for 22 years. That
Wow.
was the big job. Every single one, my favorite part is working with people. Every single one, from the little kids and children's and getting them excited about books to, people coming in who are going to argue their own law case.
Uh-huh.
And you're going through the
Mhm.
statutes with them like, yeah, okay, I got you.
Good luck.
Yeah, blessings. But always interesting and always stories. And as a writer, I think you're always looking for stories. And there's so many interactions that I've been out of the game for 11 years, and I will still go back to what a little kid said to me when they got their first book or their card or they crushed it on summer reading, or those people who wanted to argue their law cases, or the guy who wanted to fix his car. I mean, they don't just tell you their problem. You always get like a little glimpse into their whole world, usually. And
You
yeah,
get
it's
to
all
play a little
material.
bit of, you get to play a little bit both of therapist and counselor, as well as like guide or Sherpa. Like, no
Oh,
matter
yeah.
what, you are taking someone deeper into access. I think that's the thing that means the most about libraries to me, is that it's access for everyone. It's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And following on what Jen said and what you said, Joe, the sort of access for everyone, I think that's sort of my obvious entry points why I love libraries. I immigrated to Canada when I was a little kid. Libraries taught me to speak. My parents didn't speak English. I had to learn it somewhere, and access to books was really important. But actually, now that I work on the academic side, the thing that I think about a lot in libraries and the thing that really moves me about them is that there are collective memory. Really often publishers will approach us and the library will have a better record of what a publisher did over the last 100 years than the publisher themselves did. And I think as a writer, that's so meaningful because the work that you make that winds up in a library, that's what will remain. And it will, it'll always be there. And there's that our memory of who we were or what we did. It's ensconced in a library. And I find that so thrilling.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up with a mother who constantly saw with a book in her hand. As a matter of fact, my mother read 350 books last year. And so that should give you an idea of
Wow.
just how much she
Wow.
loved reading. So we
Cool.
practically grew up in a library. And another thing that I saw her was we always had to volunteer to do something, was this passion, this call to serve people was something that was ingrained in us in a very, very young age. And I received that when I started working in a library, was like this call to serve and to help people. And I never realized how fulfilling it would be to help someone on a computer or to find a book that they just love, or introduce them to one of their favorite authors. It was that call to serve for me that just really is the thing that I love, knowing that I helped someone that day.
For me, it's a very personal thing. I had a very odd childhood, and the only place that I felt comfortable and safe was in the local library. It was like a little tiny wooden one-room schoolhouse-looking library in the middle of a park. And I would go there every day and sit on the floor, at age 9 or 10, and just randomly pull out books, mythology. And I wanted to be Joseph Campbell and pull out another book. And a lot of the ones that I pulled out in the kids section were mysteries. And it's what kind of made me want to write them when I got older. It was a feeling of safety and home for me, the library was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think all of your writing reflects that. Even when there is a murder or something to solve, it still comes back to community. And I think
Yeah.
libraries are such a source of that. I mean, uh, Eva, it sticks with me, of course, is like the libraries are museums. They have better records than some of the entities that are creating the books. And Jen, I think of like the conversation around access and putting both of those together of like, this is someone's first chance to see a book like this. And Tara, your point of like helping someone get to a computer and introduce them to something for the very first time, or
Mhm.
reintroduce them to someone that they loved from so long ago. And then, right, PJ, looking at safety, community protection. It's a
Yeah.
place to discover and explore. I mean, I think there's so much to that. And I then, of course, also think of all of you having books to tour. How often are you in libraries now to talk about the books that you've written?
Quite a bit. I mean, when my tour gets put together, I've made it no secret that I would like to attend some events in libraries. I am a I am a former librarian, so of course, and I understand how expensive sometimes events could be to get an author to come there. And so I've always said that I would be willing to go for free, but as often as I can. And of course, I still visit my local public library and check out books, of course.
Of course.
I hide in my public library.
Are you often working there?
Yeah, I
Any of
have
you
my own little study, Carol. I want them to put my name on it.
Oh, wow.
get your brass
And it's not the
plaque?
library I worked at. It's the one I live in. I live in Scottsdale, but I have 2 sons. They're out of the house now, but it used to be a musician husband, 2 teenage boys, one who's into MMA and the other one who was a film major. The volume in my like I had my desk had a full drum set behind it at one point.
Oh my goodness.
In our yeah, it was just like, and so I just started going to the library. And, like Tara, I go to events at libraries, which I love because I feel like that's when you see your people. So yeah, big library visitor.
Yeah, I love those. The first book event I ever got to do when my first book came out was with the Toronto Public Library. And that was, I think, maybe the most thrilling day of my life because I've been to so many, like I've seen Kazuo Ishiguro, Judy Blume, Zadie Smith in this one room at the Toronto Public Library. My first book came out high COVID, the Omicron strain. We laughed that I had an Omicron COVID book. So everything was online. But in my head, I'm like, no, technically it's the same event series as Kazuo Ishiguro did. It counts.
It does.
Libraries are such supporters of you as writers. Getting to go and do the events is great and meeting the readers. But one of my favorite things that I love to do in the time leading up to a book coming out is I look at my hold count. It's like the best. I love like
That's good.
TorontoPublicLibrary.ca right now. There's 121 holds. I'm very excited.
That's right.
Everyone
Um,
waiting on the release for
Everyone waiting on
640.
the
That's
release. But like, what a great signal of how supportive libraries are of your work, and seeing that they're putting you in front of readers. I don't know. It's just such a cool thing.
I also love hearing that though, because it's the like, you all understand the reality of the impact of libraries. I think often I feel urged to fight and be like, these circs, this data, these numbers are still counting to all of the pub goals. And, in my work behind the scenes with publishers, it's the like, okay, well, how do we count into the list of things like this jacket appeared in these places and merchandising happened in these places. Like these titles were promoted to a new audience. It's all still the same. So just to even hear like, yeah, I'm looking to see what the wait list looks like before the book even comes out, because
Yeah.
that's also the secret. Like you can see where interest is right about now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't see that anywhere else. I mean, I guess I
Right.
don't know what it looks like for you if you're getting any sort of like pre-order info from certain places, but
I'm gonna definitely have to start doing that. I've never done that.
Oh, it's the best. I mean, and it's so interesting where there's like a couple of systems that I like check in on around North America, but obviously the Toronto system is the one that's most important to me. I remember being on some book tour event with Terah, and I can't remember who else, and Terah showed them World Cats. And she
Yeah.
was like, you can see how many libraries around the world your book
Yeah.
is in. And this other writer, I can't remember for the life of me who it is, but they were so excited. It looked magical to them. And,
Yeah.
that's the idea of your book reaching that many people. That would be impossible
Right.
without libraries.
That's right.
For me, I'm thinking more about these performance pieces that I do in libraries. The last one that I did with a choreographer friend of mine in our local library was the idea was that we would allow people to sneak into the library through the back door after the library was closed. And you could see what happened in the library when it was dark. And all the books came to life and characters were wandering around the library. It's kind of like a bizarre, like literary haunted house, sort of. And we expected, 20 or 30 people to come to see this thing. And we had to extend it for 4 days. People were lined up around. People really
Wow.
wanted to come into the library,
Mm.
feel like they were getting away with something by sneaking in, after dark.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun to do because we got to actualize, there were a bunch of us involved in this finally. We got to actualize all of our favorite books, including some of mine. So it was just really a lot of fun to do these like odd little tiny performances and see how many people, it was astonishing to me how many people wanted to come to the library, wanted to be there, wanted to feel like they were seeing the inside story kind of.
Gosh, that's one of the things that I just love about libraries as I got older, because I grew up thinking that libraries was just about books. And we all know that it is more about books. But to go to a library and to see a performance, I mean, it's still book related, but it's still a performance. I mean, this is one of the amazing things about libraries.
Agreed.
oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. This is one of those soapboxes I'm happy to jump on, because part of what I work on here outside of the podcast is we have a program right now called Check Out Your Library. So we partner with libraries across the United States and Canada and across the world when we have the opportunity. But the goal is to send our staff and send materials. And it's not just saying like, oh, go try Libby. The whole goal is to go back into the library. Do you know that your library offers X, Y, Z? So, I mean, like in California, Los Angeles Public Library, you can borrow pressure washers. Here in Cleveland, you can rent bikes and canoes. I mean, all over, you get to see so much. There's culture passes, because some museums are very expensive, but the library has passes to loan out. So that barrier falls away. So, I mean, like, Tara, exactly what you said. It's not just like books and DVDs on shelves. It
Right.
is so much more maker
Okay.
spaces and
Mhm.
opportunities.
Hmm. Yeah.
You just reminded me that when I was a kid, my parents rented paintings from the library.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
we
Yeah.
got
wow.
to keep a painting over our mantle, and it was a different impressionist every month. So I learned a lot about impressionism because my parents will like haul these. Sometimes they were really big paintings from the library.
Yeah.
I don't know whether
amazing.
our library does that anymore or not, but it was just so cool that we got to get a different picture every month.
Yeah.
There are still some in the US that have that
Really?
same kind of thing where there are collections of like donated art that,
Mhm.
right, can be loaned out. So, right, you having a party with people coming over and you go, I really wish I had something a little nicer over this couch at your library.
I love it.
PJ, I'm so fascinated by the art performance in the library space. I think that's just so unique. How does it feel to have so many creative muscles to flex. It's not just writing. It is not just, like you have so much, and they all kind of come back to that same library home.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly just can't concentrate on any one thing for an extended period of time. I love doing these little performances. There's a group that's associated with our library here called Georgia Center for the Book, and I do performances there all the time with them. Sometimes they're musical performances attached to a book, or readings, or like performance art quasi theater pieces attached to a book. And man, it's just amazing how that changes the readers, the people who come to see it, like suddenly see these things happening in front of them instead of in their minds. And then the discussion is, well, that's not how I pictured this character, or that's exactly who I thought that woman was. Or, I mean, it's just a brilliant way to start. For me, it has been a brilliant way to start a conversation about any book or any idea, actually.
I think that also makes me think of like libraries democratize access. It goes
100%.
back to
Yeah.
access. Performances are available. Do y'all have thoughts on just some of the things that we're not thinking of behind the scenes that a lot of people might not think of? Oh, this is making sure that someone has access to XYZ.
Well, I think the arts passes are a great example. Somebody shouted those out. So, I'm the parent of a young kid. I really often will take him on a Saturday to the art gallery or to our museum. And that is such a fulfilling experience for him. It's also that pass costs us a few $100s a year. We're lucky that that's something that we can maintain. And the fact that the library will allow you access to take your whole family to a museum, expose your kids to art and play, allow them to think in that way, or really fun, or take them to the zoo. I'm trying to think of what the other arts passes are, but that it's about learning and not just learning from books. And it allows passes, and I think this is happening all over North America now in libraries. I think often people don't know about, if they don't need those passes or they don't know they exist, they don't make that connection. But I think that's a really important part of the work that the library is doing, making those available and saying, go and, stand in front of a rock and experience how that feels when you're 8 years old. That something like that could change someone's life in the same way as putting Anne of Green Gables in their hands might.
Yeah. For us at my library, we started a program for hotspots. I think people
Oh, hard.
underestimate the number of people who do not have access to the internet. And I remember standing in front of my city commissioners and explaining to them this program. And if you can believe it, I had a city commissioner say, does a library need to provide that? Doesn't everyone have internet at home? And I had to bite the inside of my lip to not show my face of how I was really feeling, because he just assumed that $40, $50, however much internet is easily accessible for everyone. And it's just not. And there's been so many stories once we started that program that of this young girl came in and she had just had a baby and she was in school, and there's a lot of school now that you can take classes online, but she had a baby in a carrier and she knew she could not bring that child in because eventually the child would start crying. So, but those hotspots made it possible for her to finish her schoolwork by taking that hotspot home and having internet access at home. And so I think people underestimate things like that to have that's accessible for most of us, but may not be accessible for other people.
For me, there's a very basic thing in our library, our local library. It's a nice place for people without homes to come in. We have a lot of unhoused people in our library every day, and most of those people come in to sit and rest and read, believe it or not. I mean, what they miss is having a place to sit down, be quiet for a little bit, listen to music because there are listening stations in our library, or read. What we've tried to do is organize like little moments for that, where people can have access to not just the books, but to these performances. Sometimes to out and back there, even there's a free meal program, a couple others, so all centered on our dinky little local library.
Yeah. I think for my favorite part or the accessibility when I was still working with children and teen is we started one of the first maker spaces. So this was way back in the 2012 or whatever. And I donated my sewing machine. I was teaching kids how to sew. We got a couple of 3D printers. So cool. And we had guys who would come in. We had volunteers who would come in and teach the teens how to code. So we had, and it was all free. You just showed up on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and the coding teacher was there, the sewing
Cool.
teacher.
Very
We
cool.
taught them crochet, knitting. One guy came in and did auto, like basic mechanics of an engine. And it
Mhm.
was, a lot of what was funny, what I thought was really interesting is we started doing this for teens because we felt like there was a knowledge gap. Like we all had to take home ec and wood shop and, back in the 80s. And these kids don't have that now. So it was like, so many things are getting cut. Okay, well, we'll just put a pin in that and not go
Well,
there.
getting cut, but also like there's so many higher expectations on learning that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
often have to sacrifice if you do have access to home ec or auto or
Mhm.
whatever to try to do the education path.
Teach
There's
to the
not
test,
time.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Right.
So they've lost a lot, but what was really interesting was adults were coming in. They'd
Yeah.
poke their little heads in and be like, but I
Mm.
want to learn how to code and I
Yeah.
want to learn how to sew and I want to learn so that we had to kind of make the maker space, everybody's space.
Yeah.
That's so
Cool.
cool.
It was super
I,
cool.
I also think on the conversation of the unhoused, when we were touring pre-pandemic with our digital bookmobile at the time, we would go to different libraries and help people get started. We were in Washington, I believe it was King County specifically, where the government there would provide unhoused people with phones and access to charge them.
Wow.
But then the library did not have a way for them to get a library card because there was a requirement for an address. And after our visit, this caused them to go like, okay, well, we need a different code to put in so folks can borrow digital materials. That way there was still access. And now we've seen such a massive change in adoption across the board of access without an address being put down.
Yeah.
But it's moments like that that you really just think like, the library is thinking about this before any of us even have
Right.
to. I mean,
That's
Tara,
right.
to your point, like your point of hotspots being available and borrowable, like the library to me for so long was like, well, that's where you go if you don't have internet. Like that's where you need to, print out a resume before something. There's a printer. You don't have to have one in your home. I mean, there's so many things. On a bit of a flip side, Eva, I'm coming to you. What's it like being an academic librarian?
It's very different. I think I went to library school thinking that I would be a public librarian because that was like such a big part of my heart. And now I don't deal with people at all. like at all. There's no, it's and most academic libraries do. My job is quite peculiar where, I sit and look at invoices and things like that. But I think it's a really special space. We also, in a way, we serve people from all over the world. And watching academia change in the 10 or whatever years that I've been in my job, where we think about, we collect in hundreds of languages, for example. And when you think about the languages that academia collects, and you probably think of like the Romance languages, and German is still very important for philosophy, and Italian is still very important for music. That's true. But now it's we had to track down students who could read Swahili because that's becoming a really important language for us to collect in, and we didn't have any catalogers in that language. And so it's a really cool spot to be in because you wind up, we buy from all over the world. Um, and we're very different than public libraries because public libraries, you might buy 100 copies of one work because it's going to be the next big thing and everyone's going to want to read it. Well, we'll only buy one copy, but we buy one copy of everything
Yeah.
and then put it in an airplane hangar, a literal airplane hangar that we own. And somebody might not read it for 50 years, and that's okay. It might become valuable in the future. So in a lot of ways, you're collecting just for the sake of collecting. The idea of preservation is really, really, really important. And the uses too, we want things to be used, but if it's not used for 50 years, if it just sits in that airplane hangar or, on a server, that's okay. because you're really just trying to capture everything and hope it speaks to a research need at some point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Such a fascinating perspective of the like curatorial versus. I mean, there are absolutely still students who I'm sure are going to those, but right, the circs look a little bit different
Yeah.
for
And
you than in the public space.
totally. And you get to learn about stuff that you would never like. Swahili pulp fiction is a real thing. And there's like a big publishing culture that we
Interesting.
try to capture now that I'm sure someone will study. Or you think about like there's a lot of work being done now in romance book covers.
Mhm.
And so we have a huge collection of Harlequin. Everyone knows Harlequin. Harlequin
Oh yeah.
book covers that we have students going in there and they're spending their time like cataloging these and describing the covers because that's a really important way of understanding who we were over the last 100 years by thinking of like who was depicted on these covers and how were
Mhm.
they depicted. So, I think about the book as an object versus content a lot, and I don't know, it's cool.
Book as an object instead of content. And now I'm just thinking of going from like Fabio on the edge of a cliff to animated covers,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, and so I'm like, well, now I need you to send me some links of articles to read about
Totally,
it.
will do.
Like, sorry, I have to ask the librarian for help while we're recording because I'm suddenly very curious. Now, I'd like us to bridge from the library world to the literary world. What first inspired all of you to start writing? Was there a spark, a book, or maybe even just a moment that stands out in life where you go, oh, it's time?
Yeah, mine's easy. I was in my 10th grade English class with my beloved English teacher, Miss May, who encouraged us to write short stories in free time because we had some free time in our class. And I wrote something and she read it and she said, "Oh, this is great. You should be a writer." And I said, Okay. And so I did. From then on, I started writing right then. I realized I started writing poetry first because poetry enhanced my ability to have relationships with people. That is, I would write a love poem to somebody and they would like it and I would get together with them. So the benefit of writing was first for me, you know, getting relationships. But after that, it started being just spectacular fun. And now, I writing is one of three things that's the most fun for me to do. And I've met plenty of writers who say they don't like writing. Uh, that whole thing. I don't like writing. I like having written. I love the process. I love sitting down. I love just
Yeah.
being there with it every day. It's just and I have, since Miss May said, you should be a writer, I've written something every day since 1965.
Nice.
Wow.
Very
Wow.
nice.
Very nice. Yeah.
Well,
Mine
no, it's
started with
not.
a teacher. I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
Mine started with a teacher as well, except I was in sixth grade. Her name was Julie Cook, and I am dating myself. And when I was in school, there was a program called Dear. You guys remember Dear? Drop everything and read. But
I, I,
yeah,
I love that.
but she allowed me to drop everything and write. And so I started writing this story about my class during these times. And she asked me if I ever wanted to stand up and read this in front of the class. And of course I said no, because I was in sixth grade and I was incredibly shy. And she worked on me the whole year to try to convince me to stand up in front of the class and read this story. And so finally at the end of the school year, it worked. I stood up and I read the story and they laughed at the jokes that was in there and they reacted. And it was the first time that I realized that something that I wrote could move people. And I was hooked after that.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. I think mine, I wish I had a cool story from a teacher, sort of like turning the tide. And it was more, I think reading and writing were always a very private thing for me. Like I said, immigrated when I was a little kid. My parents did not understand Canadian culture like at all. And so reading was a really important part of learning how to be a person in the world. So, you read Anne of Green Gables to understand Canada. You read Judy Blume to understand like being a preteen. When I got a little bit older and was spending time in London, you read Zadie Smith to understand Cricklewood. Like that was always really important. At the same time, I was also writing things down to try and help myself, go through, like, understand experiences that I was having. The idea of being a professional writer never crossed my mind. Also, probably because I'm an immigrant and that is not a real job that you can tell your parents. Like, um, and so I think even when I started thinking about publishing something and writing more seriously, that was always like it was a very private thing. There was no person who said you should do this because I think that the idea of that still seemed too scary. But it's a magic trick what can happen in books. That can help you understand yourself and the world. And I think even though I'm writing about, people getting murdered in small spaces, it's a little bit of what I'm trying to.
But still, I mean, that's such a journey to have to go from very personal self-expression. I'm imagining like many like journal entry along the way and moments like that where you're like, this is private reflection, to then be like, uh-oh, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to see what the world thinks of what I think and what I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have anybody tell me I should be a writer either. It's
Okay, I feel better.
I had a lot of people be like, why would you do that? And I never, this is where, child of a librarian and a reader. I mean, I read like all of Nancy Drew in one summer. I mean, I had kind of I call my childhood crazy train breaking down in Dysfunction Junction, if you know what I mean. So books were like a real safe space for me. So I never really thought about the person on the other side of the book. Like that never occurred to me that someone actually wrote this. I thought they just were magic and they came fully formed and thank you. And I might survive this hellscape I'm living in. And then when I was 16, I saw the movie Romancing the Stone. And I know, in the theater. And I was like, everybody else is like, oh, the romance, this and that. And I was like, wait, this is a job? Did people did like, like it's like it had literally, I never fangirled on an author. I don't know. It just, like I didn't connect the dots. So it's amazing I even made it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I saw that movie and I was 16 and I was like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. And then I didn't do anything for like 10 years, but the seed was in there, And then when I hit like my mid-20s, I'm like, oh, if you're gonna do that, you should probably do that. So that's when I started writing.
You've definitely caught up since then, right? Like,
Clearly.
your catalog is there.
It's so funny because people are like, you write so much, and it's I write out of panic. So that it's every second I think the dream is going to get taken from me. Even now, even with this many books and 3 different genres, and I'm just always convinced that the next book will be my last, because. And then I heard about Baker and Taylor going belly up, so I've just been freaking out. So, so yeah, there's that. Not to be the buzzkill, but
No, but there are so many things that are changing around us constantly within the libraries, with challenges and bans. I mean, within writing as things merge and change and shift over the years. But before we get into that, the thing I want to kind of push on here, Jenn, the concept of I never thought of the person behind the book. I just thought books magically appeared one day. My question to all of you is like, what does it feel to have pieces of yourself out in the world and know that people are reading these and are having either that moment of don't know how this got here, but I'm glad it's in my hands, or I want to do that too. Like, how does that feel to all of you?
Or how did this get here? Who gave this? Well, don't forget those people.
Sometimes.
Those love people.
Yeah, I'm sure you all have gotten some really fun. I can't even call that fan mail, but
yeah. No, I think
comments.
it's those are the ones I remember. Had a woman reach out to me through email, and I'm sure every writer's had this, but this one really struck me because I have a son who spent a lot of time in Phoenix Children's Hospital, and those were some of the worst days of my life. And this woman reached out to me and she said, I just have to let you know, I just spent a week with my son in the Children's Hospital, and your books got me through. And I just have to say thank you. And it was just like such a, so yeah, that's on the bad days, when your characters are just flounce off the page and are not going to be cooperative. It's like, no, we have people counting on us. Get back here.
That's good. I write these books that take real life circumstances that happen to people every day that we don't talk about or we don't know enough about. And so I start off writing these books, and I'm always shocked that somebody email me and say, I feel seen through this character or this particular story happening. It is always a shock to me. And I don't know why, because that's literally what I write about. But there's nothing that feels as good as knowing that people can see themselves in your work, or they're inspired to do something. They're inspired to forgive a loved one, or they're inspired to,
Hmm.
for in long after, to get estate planning, and there's nothing better than that. So, but it's still a surreal experience for me.
I agree. The first time I got a letter, and it was a handwritten letter from somebody that said, "You're my favorite author." And I thought to myself, No, I'm not. I'm not anybody's favorite author." I actually wrote her back and said that. Surely you must be mistaken. And we started a correspondence. This was almost 20 years ago, and we still write each other every once in a while. And she talks about this. Here's why. It's this thing in this book that made me feel better about this. It's this thing in that other book that made me suddenly philosophical. This is, about bad things that were happening to me. It's this book about this introduced me to Taoism. Thanks very much. And I never believe it. I'm always astonished when somebody thinks that something that I wrote had any kind of effect on them at all, because I generally think, I write the books, I hand them over to the editor, and then they're gone, and I don't think about it anymore, frankly.
I mean, the flip side of that, though, is that it's really scary because we are kind of, you're standing naked in front of a room a lot. I think in my first two books, I was really purposeful about one had a main character that was a lot older than me, and one had a main character that was a lot younger than me. This next book is the characters looks like me, not act physically, but has some similar life experiences to me. And like on one hand, it's mortifying that there's like fellatio in this book that my mom's going to read, so she's going to know that I know what that is.
Right.
But then when you think about like the heavier experiences or the heavier emotions that you're ascribing to a character, it means that people are going to look at you and know that you've felt those things um and have experienced those things. And the best possible version of that is what Terah said, that somebody's going to read that and somebody's going to say, well, I feel that too, and how great that
Mhm.
I can relate to that, or this is going to inspire some change in me. But you do have to put yourself out there in order to do that. And that I find really scary. I worry about the people in my life reading something and being like, oh, I didn't, causing hurt because they're taking an experience of your character and thinking that that might be relatable to something in real life. So it is the sort of diaristic aspect of this. We're not, this is all fiction. We're not writing about ourselves, but you can only write about emotions and things like that if you have a sense of what those were. So that's the sort of scarier. I feel like I'm made such a bummer out of this, but it can be frightening having to put yourself out there in that way.
Candy. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
There's so much vulnerability to it. You're absolutely right. You have to have felt it to accurately portray it, and for
Yeah.
someone to respond to it means you did your job. But that's also where you go like, ooh, I really am just like laid bare right now.
Yeah.
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 Now, I mean, I guess I'll be the bummer. What are some of the changes you've seen both in the writing space and in the library space? These are all positive and negative. Like there's a little bit of everything in there. It's truly not a bummer. It's take it where you like. But what are some of the things you've noticed? Some of the things that give you hope, and some of the things you're watching on.
I was most recently a bummer, so I'm going to be positive.
Please.
And I am going to talk about the sort of wide scale adoption that audio, like reading in your ears, is still reading, and
Yes.
audiobooks is reading. I find that I mean, shouts to Libby. I've been reading a ton of French novels, and she's a Dublin-based mystery writer, and so the books are narrated by somebody with an Irish accent. And I think that in that case, that is probably more immersive than it would be if I were reading on the page. If you've struggled with reading slumps because you're having a hard time in life, I think audiobooks are a great way to break out of that. And it's so recent. I mean, I think probably even 5 years ago, you were probably hearing the argument that, like, well, that's not reading.
Yeah.
And I think that finally we've sort of closed the book on that. And whether it's because the audiobooks are so much more available than they used to be, or like, I don't know why it is, but I think that that is a big change and a book is closed. And I really, that's been really meaningful to my reading life.
You're so right. I think there's such a huge dynamic shift, not only in audiobooks or reading, they count, it's all of that, but also I no longer worry like, is this book that's coming out going to get an audiobook version? Before it used to be like, I mean, I was getting them on tape and on CD, so you didn't always
Right.
know
It's so true.
if it was
That is
going to
true.
happen. And like there are still so many books that like I know we're not going back catalog to update and provide. I mean, some get it, but most don't. But now it's a very heavy set expectation that
Mhm.
there will be an audiobook
That's right.
version of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
book upon its release, not even like 6 months later if we see
Right.
what the reception is. Like it's coming with the book.
No, and it's
And like
very lucrative. Sorry, for
no,
authors.
no.
Like
Yeah.
I wrote a couple of books for Harlequin way, way when I was baby writer, and they just got sold to audio. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the most amazing. And I was like, okay. They're like, oh, you really want to do that? And they're like, yeah. And so it's audio is kind of becoming a whole separate.
Mhm.
Well, not becoming, it is a
Yeah.
whole separate wonderful thing. So
My
yes,
good
Ava,
fortune
100%.
Sorry.
No, good.
My good fortune is to know a lot of actors who do the audiobooks, and all of them take it it's like deadly serious. They really
yeah.
work on them. A friend of mine who read a couple of my books, would call me like all the time and goes, "This right? Am I getting this here? Am I?" I mean, they take it more seriously, frankly, than I did when I was writing it. They're just very eager to make the book just right,
Yeah.
including this friend of mine who did some reading in French also, and he would like stop and say, "I don't think this translation is right of this sentence." So I mean, he just really, I think most of the people who do audiobooks take the job really seriously. And I think
Yeah.
that's a huge positive because it's not the first, sorry, I'll be brief. The first audiobook of my first book, it was called Easy. It came out in the 90s. And the reading was this. Easy by Philip DePoy.
Oh, wow.
Chapter 1. I mean, it was some guy in a hotel room drunk and smoking and reading my book out loud.
Lord.
So, I mean, I think things have progressed a lot since then.
A little bit.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a narrator tell me recently, he was listening to a book and he's like, it's a book that I love, but every once in a while you'd hear the cat in the
Oh
background,
my God.
just the occasional meow. And at some point I started waiting to hear, is the cat going to meow again? And, about 20
Oh,
seconds later,
goodness.
there'd be the meow.
Oh,
And,
goodness.
it's very different now to like hearing, pop culture figures who've been asked to write books or tell their stories, and then they talk about. I'm thinking of like Bob the Drag Queen reading his audiobook for Harriet Tubman live in concert. He was talking about like I would be reading along for the audiobook and I'd get stopped immediately to say, well, on the page it says the, not an, so you need to correct that. And he'd be like, I couldn't get through a sentence sometimes, and I wrote it. Like,
Yeah.
so
Right.
the production is there on
Yeah.
all sides. The people care,
Yeah.
but also the studio
Yeah.
cares. I mean,
Yeah.
Tara, I'm also going to be very curious to see how like audiobooks go for you now with Sourcebooks audio being alive and well compared to like
Man. Yeah.
and your audiobooks that's by no means critique. I mean, they've always been beautifully done, but it is the like I want to see how it is being more like in-house rather than in
Yeah.
collaboration with.
And I'm so happy you brought that up because I know, Eva, we've completely hijacked your idea for the audio book. But it's because you were so right with that. With this one, I'm going to be allowed dual narration, which I have
Ooh.
just loved books that have dual narration. So for my next book, Where the Wildflowers Go, having that man and woman read the
Mm.
parts is going to be so amazing. But for audiobooks, for me, it's a way to introduce people into reading. I was at the
Yeah.
airport and I was talking to this woman next to me and I was reading something and she said, I don't see how you can read that. And I said, you don't read. And she says, no, I don't read. I can't focus. She can't focus enough to read a book. And I understand that. I've had a lot of patrons tell me that before. And so this gives me my chance to introduce them to audiobooks. I said, have you ever tried an audiobook? And she'd never heard of an audiobook, didn't know what that was. And it was so amazing when I pulled up one of my audiobooks and I showed her, this is the book that is being read to you. And you can do this while you're cleaning your kitchen, while you're in
Right.
your garden, while you're
Yeah,
going
yeah,
for
yeah.
a walk.
Yeah.
And she could not believe that such a thing existed, especially when I told her to go to her local public library and download
Get
Libby
one.
and get the
Yep.
books for free. Like she was like, well, it's too expensive. And I was like, actually, fine.
Actually, it doesn't have to be. Yeah,
It does
Tara,
not
your
have
check
to
is in the
be.
mail.
It does not have
Right.
So it's been a way for me over the years to introduce people to reading and through audio. And so yeah, Eva, thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point to
Mhm.
make.
Excellent. And I totally agree. Dual narration is amazing. One of my romances, and someone wrote to me, she's like, I'm listening to your book, and the guy's reading his part, and she's like, I need a fan and a bucket of ice. And I was like, good job, buddy.
Yes.
But I think I'll pivot away from, you're saying what are some good things we're seeing? And I'm going to double back to Ava again. You're just leading the way, honey. Books as objects. I think what I am so ecstatic about is that books are becoming art. You have spreads, sprayed edges. You have
Yes.
beautiful covers. You have publishers really leaning in. Granted, this usually only happens for people who are like crushing it already, but I have hope. I have hope that, but I think they're like really, and especially with the rise of AI, and this goes to the audio
Yeah.
too. Like I will fight for real actors to read my books. Like if they come at me with, we're going to have AI do it, it's going to be like, then you're not going to be doing it for me. I need
Right.
that human.
Mm-hmm.
Only a human, I think, can deliver the voices. And I think
Agreed.
books as art, again, I'm just going to talk in circles, but making them collectible, making them something that sits on your shelf, making them, I look at my grandparents' old books and a lot of them had the gold, the gilded edges. They're
Yeah.
special books that I wasn't allowed to touch.
Yeah.
And it's like we're coming back to that where, bindings are beautiful and, everywhere they can put something pretty or like Ed and Pete, Rachel Housel Hall had a book come out recently that is probably one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that's one of the good things I see happening.
I think
Yeah.
that's such a good point, though. Like the beauty and the effort going into it, right? The walk away from AI, that there are artists that are designing these covers, but then also continuing that on to the spreads. His Face is the Sun, Michelle Yabes Corpora. That book was printed with sprayed edges as the only option. So if you walk into any bookstore, it is not a
Mhm.
special edition. It is not a
Mhm.
like, you don't
Right.
have to have 4 different copies of the same book if you are truly treating it as like a
Yeah.
collector.
Right,
It
right.
was just like everyone's experience is a gorgeous experience. And
Mhm.
I think it is really cool to see that whether you're experiencing it off the library shelf or if you are, able to build your own collection at home, I think that's a really cool process.
What I love about the sprayed edges, sorry, and then I'll let it
No,
go.
please.
I'm a teeny bit obsessed. So my local bookstore is the Poison Pen. And when Rachel's book came out, she had beautiful sprayed edges because of course she did. And have to with a cover like that. They would put the cover facing and then they would shelve them backwards. So you were looking at the spreads. And it was like, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
No,
And then I
that-
asked my publisher if I can have them. And they said no. So
Well, just send them this episode and be like, I think I have to have them now.
Yeah.
There you go.
yes.
That is my only complaint about beautiful books is I don't know how to shelve them at home. I don't
Yeah.
know which way.
Right?
I don't know which way to go.
Yeah.
Good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great problem to have. I could talk to all of you for ages, but I guess I do have to try to wrap us up. So I want to
Whoa.
wind us down with a lightning round. So it's a cozy library lightning round. just, first thing that comes to mind, we'll go off of instinct. Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress?
Dewey
Library of Congress.
Decimal.
Dewey.
Dewey Decimal.
Dewey Decimal.
Okay.
I'm out on academic library corner here.
Sorry, Eva.
And that is
Sorry.
okay. I love it. Favorite library snack, even if it's contraband?
Popcorn.
M&Ms. No crumbs.
Oh, very good. Very good.
And no buttery fingers.
Yeah.
Nobody
I'm trying to
forget.
think. The last thing I snuck into I think cheese sticks was what I had in my little study carrel.
Brave. And these could even just be your writing snacks, whatever works. Are you going for a quiet reading nook or a bustling book club?
Quiet.
Quiet.
Bustling. I can't do full silence for writing or reading. I need ambient noise.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if I'm reading, I likely have a TV show on that I've seen 800 times just playing in the background.
Oh,
Like,
Yeah, or like on the subway or in a cafe with people talking. I need stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
Right. Or I've got some sort of like weird YouTube up that's like friends talking in another room while The Exorcist plays on TV in the one apartment over. Like that's the kind of like strange lo-fi happening. Book cart races, yes or no?
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Maybe not in the hangar though, in the airplane hangar.
No.
Or definitely in the airplane. I don't know. Maybe it's better. The floors are a little more slick.
Sure.
What would your library staff t-shirt slogan be?
Oh, that's a good one.
I saved the hard-hitting questions for the end. In the way.
Yeah. I think people have no attention span, so mine would just be like, just read. Just read.
Love that. Go the Nike route. Just read it.
Yeah. Just read. Or listen.
Goodness, that's a difficult one. Probably turn it off and turn it back on, because that's one of the things that was said the most.
Yeah.
The most often given
most,
advice.
yeah.
Turn it off and turn it back
Turn it
on.
off,
That
turn
is
it back
actually the
on.
right answer, Tara.
The most questions.
Yeah.
And then describe your dream library or bookstore.
The old New York bookstore from Atlanta, Georgia, that went out of business, 10 years ago. I would like to always be there. It was a Victorian mansion filled with books that you could just go in anytime, read anything you want. I never bought anything there, and I read 100 books there.
Yeah.
That's the ideal. That's my
Yeah.
place.
That's nice. I like that.
There's a room in Shakespeare and Company in Paris where a lot of very famous authors stayed and wrote. And I would say that room, because it has a bed in it and it has a desk in it.
Yep.
And I would say that room, but maybe add a cat.
They have a cat.
Always had a
They-
cat.
They have one?
They have a cat. Oh yeah.
Never saw. I've been there several times. I've never seen the cat. So
It's probably shy during because it's that store so busy now. It's probably
Yeah.
shy during the day, but no,
Yeah.
they have
I love
cats.
it.
Yeah.
Tara took my
Yeah.
idea.
I'm sorry.
Fine. It's okay.
That's okay.
I'll forgive it.
Sometimes the right answer comes.
But I will say the combination of both of those, my ideal library, if we're talking
Yeah. Any
no
kind.
holds,
Yeah.
open 24 hours a day, provides food, fully utilized bathrooms, a cot if someone needs a nap, a really good bed. Let's go full tilt. Sleeping rooms. Why not? Pods, little pods you can go catch a nap in. Staff would be in there all the time. Help whenever you need it, for anything. I
Yeah.
think I read something the other day, or I saw it in the noise of the internet, but it was something like, can you imagine the response of society if you tried to introduce public libraries today?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the concept of them. And
Yeah.
I was hit with such gratitude that people came up with this way before we got into these weird,
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
regulating
Yeah.
everybody times.
Yeah.
So mine would be like, I guess it would be home. I guess I would create a library that's just home for everybody.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Before I let you go, we'll go around the room again, let the people know where to find you online or anything you'd like to promote. I'm going to do the same order as before. So Tara, I'm coming back to you. It's just the luck of the Zoom draw.
Yeah. My third book, Where the Wallflowers Grow, will be published February 17th, 2026. And I can be found on Instagram under Terah S. Harris, and my website is terahsharris.com.
Easy. Perfect.
Mhm.
Jenn.
My first fantasy is coming out in 2 weeks. It's called Witches of Dubious Origin.
Fun.
It's set mostly in New York City. It's about a small town librarian in Connecticut who the family grimoire shows up at her house, and she discovers that she's from a family of witches and that she can raise the dead. Yeah, so she ends up
Love
going
it.
to this
Cool.
museum of literature to get help from a department called the Books of Dubious Origin department. And then as she figures out what happened to her grandmother and her mother and why this grimoire has come into her life. Um, anyway, yeah, she figures it all out. Hopefully, maybe, because I'm writing book 2 right now, so we'll see.
So you'll know soon, even if she figures it all out.
Yeah. But it's my first fantasy, so I'm a little bit excited. But it's all library love. She goes from a small town to a big, private library. But it kind of touches on everything. What's your ideal library? Well, the Books of Dubious Origin is the department that she ends up in is kind of like all the magic books. Like there's a book that's a book or a cat, or is it both, or what is it? So there's just like I got to really just go crazy,
Oh,
and it was super fun.
oh, that's
So that's
perfect.
in 2 weeks.
Amazing. Eva.
My next book is coming out in 2 weeks from when we're recording this on October 28th. It's 6:40 to Montreal, and it's set on the train between Toronto and Montreal. The train breaks down in the snowy woods, and hilarity ensues. So check for that in the store, 6:40 Montreal. I'm really proud of it. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Eva V or on my website at evajurczyk.com.
Perfect. And we will let you round it out for us.
Thanks very much. My next book comes out this Christmas. It's called All My Bones. It's the second in the Old Juniper Bookshop series. The Juniper Bookshop is an odd bookstore in Enigma, Georgia. It will be my 24th novel, but this only the second in this series. I've already written the third, and I'm working on the fourth one now. So I'm very happy about this series. And my website is philipdepoy.com. That's for PJ Nelson too.
Love it. Well, thank you all for joining me.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
for having me.
Thanks.
And
Thanks,
now
Joe.
we'll head over to our next segment. Hey, friends, we've hit that midpoint in the episode, and this week I want to bring you a Libby tip to have you searching in Libby like a pro. Now, this comes from an amazing Libby Life article from our friend Anya over on the tech support team. Full article linked in the description. But remember that you can go to libbylife.com, join our weekly mailing list for free, get all sorts of weekly articles and tips in your inbox, as well as find some other podcast goodies, including Libby Life exclusive content. But let's switch over to Libby and dive into the search function. All right, now we're in Libby. We're chilling out in my home library. We're going to go into the navigation bar. If you tap on the magnifying glass, you can search by title or subtitle, author, narrator of an audiobook you love, the subject you're interested in, the name of a series or the name of a magazine. You can search by an award. So if you're looking for Hugo Award winners, go for it. You can search by publisher or even the imprint. So you can look for any of those fun things, or you can type in keywords. So let's just type in something here. I'm going to type in Daniel Henning. Let's go for a narrator. Now, after running your search, you can narrow down and refine it with filters like format, language, subject, and more. Of course, because I went the narrator route, we are pretty much going to see things just in English. I think that's mainly what Daniel works in. But we have two filters right here. We can see this audiobooks filter is already applied because he is a narrator. And I could also choose available now to see things that don't have wait lists. If you tap in, you can see additional options like deep search to see different titles that your library may not have, but you can recommend that they get. And additional as you continue on. Great for audiobooks. Since we're looking at a narrator, you could do the duration. Now, if there are filters you want to pick and stick and stay, like available now, if you always want to only see titles that are available now, you never want to see something on a wait list, you could pin that filter, and that will mean it will stick and stay until you go back in and change it. That way you'll never see books with wait lists, but available now isn't one I typically recommend pinning. I tend to recommend this for language. If you only want to see books in one language, If you only like audiobooks, you may want to pin the audiobook filter. Things like that can kind of help you only see the content you want in. If you're a parent setting a device up for a kiddo, it's also great if you go in and do things like that to just kind of help them out. Now, when you're typing in Libby, we saw, and now we'll go to TJ Klune. You're going to get all of these suggestions. Libby will suggest titles, authors, narrators, and series it thinks you might be typing. If autocomplete gives you no results when you're typing, don't give up. You may have skipped a word or changed the word order, but you can keep going and hit search and still find titles. So we'll go into author here. Now, when you visit a title's details page, so I'm going to go into the House in the Cerulean Sea, you can click on the many aspects of the title that interest you. If you scroll down to the bottom here, we're seeing all of those reviews, we're seeing awards, and then we've got this section right here. And everything in here pretty much is clickable. So we could click into TJ Klune, and that's going to take us to all his titles. We could click into Tor Publishing Group or Tor Books, and that will take us to other books by those publishers and imprints. And you can kind of continue from there. If you go further down, you'll see titles in the series. And then other titles in this list, these are going to be those recommended titles. These are all books by TJ Klune. Now, what do you do if you can't find something in Libby? So first off, if you type in, let's say we are looking for the Da Vinci Code. We got no results because I spelled it wrong. I missed an I. You should check for typos. Libby's search isn't fuzzy like Google's is. Google will correct typos or flubs or flips for you and say, did you mean? Libby does not do that. That is a different type of search functionality. So, try typing it again. But also, if you want to get really specific and you know that it's by Dan Brown, you can put both in and it's going to narrow down your search process, make it a little easier for you. Of course, if it doesn't pop up when you type in, something very specific or you even use that recommendation, your library may not own it. And again, that is where you will use that deep search button we mentioned earlier. So just some great ways that you can really enhance your search experience. Thank you for checking that out. With that, you are searching like a pro. If you want more filters or to see Anya's full write-up, check out the link to the post in the description or visit libbylife.com. And if you want to see more about the podcast, libbylife.com/book lounge. Now with that, let's move into our book recs. Well, welcome to our second segment where today we will be giving you some library-based book recommendations, whether that means they are books written by librarians or take place in a library or have a magical tome, any number of things. That's what we're bringing you today. Joining me, we have an incredible group, as always, bringing you the most thoughtful recs around. Amy, Carmen, Cece, and Meara are here. I will give them all a moment to say hi and where to find them. But of course, everything's linked in the episode description. Alphabet be my guide. Amy, I'm coming to you first.
Hi, I'm Amy Allen Clark, and I host the Book Gang podcast, which celebrates debuts, backlist books, and under the radar book gems. And you can always find me under Mom Advice, which has absolutely nothing to do with Book Gang, but that's how I started. So
Sometimes once you start, you just have to stick with it, right?
I can't relinquish my domains. Yeah.
Having gone through a rebrand, I get it.
Yeah.
Carmen, hello. It's good to see you this season.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here. My name is Carmen, and I read and recommend books by Latinx authors primarily. But I'm also a huge advocate for funding our public libraries, for public libraries in general, really, as well as I have the misfortune of living in the county in the United States that was just voted the one with the second most amount of book bans. And so I fight against book banning here in my county as well. You can find me hearkening back to Amy and names that don't make sense. My account is called Tomes and Textiles. It's because I love books and clothes, if you think of it that way. And I'm very happy to be here this season and to talk to you about library.
But you always have the best books and the best clothes. I mean, like, I'm looking at your shirt right now and it's just like, I love a good print. What does it say?
It is actually a poem by Mo Brown.
See,
And yeah, I waited. It was like one of those Alice and Oliva like things that they do. They do all these great collaborations, and I waited for it to be on sale, and it was actually available in my size. So I feel like I won bookish writing fashion with it.
the bookish fashion lottery. Oh, that's so good. And hey, you may be in like the worst place possible for bans, but we need you there because you are there fighting the good fight. So it may be unfortunate, but that means you can bring change.
Yes, thank you. I've never found something that my big mouth love to do more than like argue with my school book. So thank you very much.
And we welcome that. Argue away. I will never forget season 1, you being like, I can't make that recording because I have to go fight the school board. Cece, hello. It's good to see you.
Hi, I'm Cece. I am usually better known online as Problems of a Book Nerd. Got yet another one coming in here. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I have been making book content online for over a decade. I talk primarily about LGBTQIA plus books online. My motto is queer lit, queer life. I want to be able to help queer people like me find stories that are about them. So that has been my mission for a long time, and it has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and I'm so excited that I get to still be recommending queer lit.
But such a good mission. And I'm always excited when we get to recommend books together because it just ends up hella gay. And I always end up with things either getting bumped up my list or I go, how did I miss that? But that's why I'm like, oh, Cece's here. Good. And then Meara, take us home.
Hi, I'm Meara. Longtime yapper on this podcast. You can find me at Meara is Reading. One of us here had to go with a very straightforward name. I had no creativity when it came to making my handle, but I'm on TikTok, Instagram, someday YouTube. I'm on Bindery with newsletters. I don't have a particular mission with my book recommendations. I'm just a girl who wanted to yell about books into the void and started doing it on TikTok. And it worked out in my favor. But if you love reading speculative fiction, dystopian, particularly like YA dystopian, I love books about witches, especially gay witches. Look to last week's episode for that. Just stuff that is fun and takes you to another little world. That's what I tend to be reading.
And I can always count on a solid yap sesh when we're together, both before we start recording and very long after.
Toxically after.
Toxically after, even when we're both like, yeah, I'm 15 minutes late for a meeting, but this is more important.
I'm
and
on
it's not
Slack
even
on the
content.
side.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
same. I'm like, oh, right. Well, my do not disturb for 1.5 hours has gone away. Let's tell them that I'm going to be later. Well, I know you all love the libraries. You are all outspoken about the libraries, and you were all more than willing a year or so ago when I sent you the most random email that said, I would love for you to join my show that is focused around libraries and the Libby app. So an episode like today feels really fitting to me. And I know I always give you the difficult job of being put in a box and only picking 2 titles, but I would love to hear what you're bringing to the table today. So whoever unmutes first and wants to start can start us off. Which looks like Amy won that one.
Oh, I
already.
guess I never did mute myself, so therefore I get to go first.
Your lucky day.
Well, as a type 1 person, the eldest daughter, I do love to go first. I won't lie. I hate waiting my turn. I actually am going to kick us off with a historical fiction pick. So I don't read a ton of historical fiction, but I do, like, once in a while find an author that I really latch onto. And one of those authors is Fiona Davis. So if you are unfamiliar with Fiona Davis, the thing that makes her books special is that she primarily focuses her novels on some type of New York City landmark. So anytime that you are acquainted with her work, she's done this huge amount of research on these really hidden, obsolete things that you don't know about New York's history. And for this segment, I thought of her book, which is The Lions of Fifth Avenue. And this one is actually set in the New York Public Library. So that's obviously a landmark that most of us know, and it's a landmark that she really admired. But what I loved that she found out about it, which is something I did not know, is that basically in the main branch of that library, there was a 7-room apartment where the superintendent and his family lived for 30 years. So that discovery actually led her to create this like fictional book. And they always have some really great dual timeline mystery thread. So in this story, we have a family that lives there in 1913 and they are caretaking for it. And Laura is someone who serves as a like traditional wife. She's always done everything she's supposed to, but she decides to apply to Columbia to work on a degree in journalism. And there, with her like headstrong behavior, she encounters a group of all women where they are encouraged to talk about things like birth control and women's rights and bucking these traditional roles. And of course, this doesn't go over very well in her house, but it really leads her on this big awakening. And then later, 80 years later, in fact, her granddaughter is working as a curator at the same library. And she starts to uncover some history about her family and starts to realize that, you know, there is some hidden history that makes her family a little bit more compelling than maybe what she initially thought. So I love Fiona mainly because she does an incredible amount of research, and I'm talking like years and years of research, but she can refine things down into like a sentence. So maybe I pick up on a detail like, oh, I really loved how you highlighted this one element of architecture. And she's like, oh, I went in there and I had like, pages and pages and pages, but we as readers only get a sentence or two of what that experience was like. And that's what makes them so readable and digestible. But when you dig into it in an interview, you discover, oh, she had days and days and days of researching this one building element where she refined it into one sentence, which is why I think they're so great for any type of reader. But it's also the kind of book that you can share with your mom or your grandmother, and you can all like enjoy it. And I think those kinds of experiences are really special. So yeah, I love her. I highly recommend her writing.
And I mean, if you could live in a library, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
How cool is that secret apartment in New York Public Library?
Who knew?
Oh, who wants to? Oh, Meara, that looked like the look of I'm going for the unmute button. I was going to say, who wants to go next? So
I was going for the unmute button because I was going to say new dream apartment unlocked, but I can also go next.
Perfect and perfect.
Okay. Every time we're recommending books, I have the biggest struggle because I'm like, do I put not like my better book, but my more like pizzazz book first, or do I save it for last? Like, do I think people are going to like stick around for the whole recommendation list? Or are they going to be like, I have one to add my TBR and I'm good. But I think I'm going to put my more surprising book last. So stick around, everybody. But my first book is still a banger. Julie Murphy, most known for the book Dumplin'. She was a librarian before she was an author. And so I have her book, If the Shoe Fits, which is a Cinderella retelling. And I love fairy tale retellings. That is one of my like special niches in book reading. And I am kind of a Cinderella hater. I think that it's kind of the most boring of the like fairy tales that you could retell. But this one is so good. Our main character, her stepmom isn't evil, but she is the main producer on what is essentially The Bachelor. And she is down a contestant to go on the show. And so she's like, I need you to come on the show. Her stepsisters are also contestants on it. And one of my like favorite things in these like dating competition-esque things where there's like a prince trying to find his princess or it's an actual dating show. I love when our main character and the romantic interest have like a special side relationship and you can just tell that she's like special to him. And that absolutely happens in this novel. Like all of the great Julie Murphy stories, the character's size plays a role in her experience, and not an experience I can speak to, but I believe it was like excellent representation of being a fat woman in a straight-sized world and still being perceived as beautiful and worthy. So that's like one of the main struggles she goes on. If she's going on The Bachelor, all these girls are tan, thin, beautiful. And she's like, I do not look like who goes on this show. But he still loves her anyway. And then also it does really, really beautiful job with grief because her mother has died. And that is why she has this relationship with her stepmother. This novel made me weep. And normally when I'm weeping in a romance novel, it is because I'm like, their love is so beautiful and that's never going to happen to me. But this one, it is truly the grief and the growth of the relationship and the mourning of her mother that made me weep. And I had to put the book down and go hug my mom. So absolutely recommend, whether you're looking for something to fill that dating show hole in your life now that Love is Blind is done, whether you're looking for a good romance, a fairy tale retelling, I think it checks boxes for a lot of those things.
And we love a book that checks box after box. Who wants to go next? Cece or Carmen? It's up to you.
I can
Oh,
jump in.
all right.
Yeah. I was also going through a which book do I put first kind of conundrum, but I think I want to talk about a book called Gay the Prairie was released originally with this new beautiful cover, and it is a wonderful queer YA contemporary that I love for a lot of reasons. But it is about a girl named Valerie who is part of a religious homeschooled community, and she is realizing over the course of the book that one, she's bisexual, and two, that the religious community that she's been raised in is actually a cult. I don't have the same backstory as Valerie or the author, Natalie, because this book is highly inspired by a lot of her own experiences. But I was homeschooled and I was raised as part of a very religious community. And something that I really connected with Valerie on this book is that books, and in particular libraries, are necessary windows into other worlds, where she has grown up sort of carefully cut off from certain information, and the library has been her only refuge. It's just like a very, very deep held feeling that I share so closely with Valerie. But she finds a book that is definitely a forbidden book. It's definitely a gay book. And seeing this for the first time, she shoves the book to the bottom of her bag and she leaves. And even though the librarian sees her take it, he lets her go. And he even at a later point in the book finds her and finds a safe way to recommend other books to her that have subtle covers or descriptions, something that we sometimes call under the gaydar books, books that she can take home that won't get her in trouble, won't get her hurt if they're found. And the thing is that, like, both of these moments of activism, of helping someone, seem so small. But I think what's really special about this book is that it makes it clear that those moments changed Valerie's life, and it changes so many people's lives. And that window into the outside world, it's a very necessary escape. Natalie, the author of this book, is also a very well-known audiobook narrator. She's narrated hundreds of books, and one of the other things that this book was inspired by was the fact that Natalie came out because of the sort of opportunity that she got to audition to narrate One Last Stop, a book by Casey McQuiston, that audiobook. And that is coincidentally the book that I think that there is just a really beautiful through line of how important information access is, how small moments of activism can help people in huge ways. And I think it's a beautiful story that's also about how wonderful it is to be queer, and that's beautiful and accepted, and that there are places for you to be safe. So if you're interested in the audiobook, it is narrated by the author herself. And yeah.
Oh, and what a perfect way to kick off, because I mean, it reminds us why we're all fighting to protect libraries. They are safe spaces, not just for the queer kids discovering themselves, for the folks who need access to resources. Like, there's endless important things that the libraries give us. And I won't get on my soapbox right now, but like, I think titles like that really do remind us what other people may be going through if we're not going through it ourselves, and just how much the library really does for us. Amy, do you want to take us to your next title?
Yeah, sure. I want to recommend The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. This is quintessentially like the perfect book club book. It's a story that's set in a suburban London library. And basically, what happens is this mysterious reading list appears hidden inside of books, inside of the shelves. And it says if basically to read certain books, quote, if you need them. And on these lists are 8 titles of books that are a lot of books that you likely know and have heard of, which is To Kill a Mockingbird, for example, Rebecca, Pride and Prejudice, Life of Pi. But at the forefront of the story is a library assistant named Alicia who doesn't read and has kind of like a little bit of a bad attitude. She's a little emo. She's a little feisty, and she is in charge of basically offering recommendations to patrons. And in comes a grieving widow who is returning a library book from the wife who has passed away. And he realizes that the best way to connect with his late wife is through the act of reading. And so he asks her for recommendations, and she stumbles upon this list. So they are essentially both reading these books kind of at the same time, learning about what they're about and discovering community around the books. And they are from different cultural backgrounds. They have different life experiences. And this was really inspired by the author's experience with her grandfather, where her grandfather and her, they had a language barrier between them. But the one thing that really brought them together was that they both loved reading. And so she saw this kind of as a bridge between different generations. And what is so wonderful about this is not only that you get to like learn about this book and this beautiful like experience where there's a really happily ever after kind of celebration at the library that you're going to really love, where the community all has to come together. And it's like that kind of like we're all coming together no matter what for this library. We also have all these other books. And so if you aren't acquainted with those books, it motivates you to understand like, why are they talking about this plot theme, or what are they getting out of it? So it's almost like it's not just these, this single book, but that you have many book experiences within it. And our book club actually had an amazing time talking about this. It was beloved by all the generations within our book club, just the experience of books and how it brings people together no matter what your ages are.
Gotta love some good intergenerational storytelling. Oh, and pardon me, Carmen, did I totally miss your first? Y'all, it's been a week.
Carmen can do a double feature.
Yep.
Oh, this will be the double feature of double features, actually, if I go back to back.
Yeah,
And
go for
we
it.
can figure that out. So
Sorry
my
about
first
that.
book. Oh, don't even worry about it. I was like, they'll figure it out eventually.
Give me time. I always will.
Yeah. So, the first book I am featuring, the one thing I will always do when recommending books here is try to at least recommend one book by a Latinx author, and this is it. It is called The Next Best Fling by Gabriela Gamez. This is Gabriela's debut contemporary romance, and it is the kickoff to a Librarians in Love series. So this series is going to feature librarians falling in love in different ways. It is definitely spicy. It's definitely like for adults. And this is probably one of the messiest romance books I have ever read in my life. But let me start off with the librarian part. Our main heroine is Marcella, and she is a youth librarian. She's also like what I would like to describe as a book talk book girly. Like she likes all the popular book talk books. And the one thing about her is that she has an immense passion for her job. So she is running the youth club at her library. And there are different scenes that take place along with that. She is putting together this fall character type of sleepover. So you see the love of someone in a contemporary setting who is a librarian, and she reads in different scenes, and she's just a bookish girl. Now, getting to how this is a messy romance, I'm going to try to put this together. So Marcella dated Ben in college for about a year when they were freshmen in college, and Ben breaks up with her after a year, and he starts dating Alice, who also happened to be friends with Marcella. And so it kind of creates this split frenemy situation between Alice and Marcella. But the book actually opens 10 years later when Marcella is at lunch with Ben and he's telling her he's going to finally propose to Alice. And Marcella, you could tell immediately, and in her kind of point of view, she's been waiting for Ben to figure out that she's the one all this time. And she doesn't say anything. She lets it go. And she's like, I have to mend my broken heart. We cut to the engagement party, and Marcella goes outside and hears someone drunkenly reciting a speech to themselves. And this is Theo, who is an NFL player, who also happens to be Ben's brother. And he's in love with Alice. So come to find out that Theo and Ben were Alice's childhood best friends because they lived like across the street from each other when they were kids. And what Marcella does is try to save Theo by taking him home with her. But the next day they show up at the engagement brunch and everyone thinks that they've hooked up. So they decide to both lean into it and also kind of become this friends with benefit situation. And they eventually figure it out. And there are lots of bookish scenes in between. But that is The Next Best Thing by Gabriela Gomez.
Carmen, if I could tell you, when I was like looking up books in libraries by librarians, trying to figure out what I was going to recommend, this book came up and I was like, could I read this in a week and like talk about it? But I was like, I do not trust myself that I could actually get that done. So I'm so excited to hear you recommending it because I was very interested in it.
I read it in like 2 days. I like could not put it down. And if you know Elena on Book Talk, she does this breakdown, like her 5-star review breakdown of it. And like we posted on the same day. And I was like, Elena, I'm going to like delete my review because her review was just so good. But anyway, yeah, I read this in 2 days. It was like a wonderful romance. And it also takes place like kind of fall into winter. So this is the perfect time of the year to read.
Oh, fantastic. Oh my God, going up on my TBR.
Right.
Yay.
I love the perfect timing and also that cover. Like it's gorgeous. And it's fun to have like a young contemporary spicy romance for a librarian. Like please.
Yep.
Now, Carmen, would you like to go back to back?
You know, I don't know that I can do these back to back,
That's
quite
fair.
honestly.
That's
So
fair.
I'm gonna
I know what your
I'll
next
skip
book
ahead.
is, and I'm like,
I
oh,
know.
we'll give it the space.
let's have it.
Perfect. Well, Meara, that means I'm coming to you.
I'm ready. Okay, so my next book, it's like not this like drop everything and read it book right now, but I think it's exciting to recommend because no one knows about this book. It is The Archived by Victoria Schwab, who everyone nowadays knows as V.E. Schwab. But she published this under her full name in 2013. So when I picked up my first V.E. Schwab book, I was like, hang on a second. Is this the same person? So I kind of had the reverse of what I think almost everyone else goes through. But when I tell you this, okay, it's supposed to be a trilogy. She's only written 2 of the books. I went to her book signing, and if you go to her book signing, she doesn't like do like the whole meet and greet. Instead, you can like write cards to her that she reads later. And I was literally like, if you write The Archived number 3, I will read it. Someone is out there like anxiously waiting for the 3rd book. If you go back on my Instagram, I was like posting photos of myself reading these first 2 books. I was obsessed with them. This was back before we had Instagram stories. So it's like on my feed. Very dedicated to it. I love it. So let me tell you about it. So the first book is called The Archived, and it is about a teenager named Mackenzie. And Mackenzie is a keeper, which is a kind of librarian because they work in these places called libraries. But instead of shelving books, these libraries shelve the dead. And so as a keeper, her job is to make sure that the dead stay on the shelves. They don't wake up, they don't get out, because some of them can turn violent, and those are called histories, capital H. And so she moved to this archive 4 years ago when she was 12, so she's 16 now, and her dad brought her there, but her dad has since passed, and so she has stepped up and taken over what he was doing as a keeper. But this is like a secret role. So she is still like kind of normal girl going to school. Imagine kind of like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but like not as cozy. imagine like the chilling adventures of Sabrina, actually. Like it's kind of like more that direction, but instead of being a witch, she's keeping dead spirits on their shelves. So it's dangerous, and it's also like just, again, really makes her sit in her grief. Sorry to be bringing grief with both of my books. Her little brother is also gone too. So she's just like constantly living in this world between like the living and the dying, and the keeping everything aligned. And then there's this romance with this bad boy. It's haunting. It's fast paced, but it's like very well developed. You get a second book that you like immediately have to pick up. And Victoria, if you're watching this, please give me the third book.
And that's the clip you should put out there. Victoria, please give us the third book.
Victoria Schwab, if you're there. Are you
It's-
there, Victoria Schwab? It's me, Meara.
Again, imploring yet again. It is wild to have a planned trilogy and just be waiting on book 3 from 2013.
If you go into book forums, people are like, in this interview, she hinted that she does have a plan for what book 3 would be.
Well, girl, get pen
So-
to paper.
Sorry to do that horrible, horrible thing where I'm like, here's this great book. The series is unfinished. But also I do think you should read it.
But you can join the ranks of the people with the one sci-fi series that I can never remember the name of, but just the fact that there's like 1.5 or 2.5 books that never seems to get the third.
There's always the whole thing too. A lot of people start series and never finish it. So like sometimes the first book is good enough for me, even if it ends on a cliffhanger. So I'm definitely
I have never finished a series, I don't think ever, hardly. Maybe Hunger Games. I think that was Twilight. That's like the last time I finished a series. I'm like, one book, I'm good. Everything's a standalone for me.
I literally have on my book bingo card for book reading this year to finish all the trilogies that I own, because I'm so bad about picking up a trilogy that's like got 2 books out. So I read the first 2 books. I'm like, this is great. And then I buy the third one. And then I'm like, but I don't remember what happened in the first 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm only on the hook for a duology. Like, don't ask me to do anything else. That's it.
I mean, Meara, I can relate to that. The like, how will I ever pick up the third book since it's been like 10 years since I knew the first 2 existed? But Amy,
I know.
Narius, well, you just read Jane Eyre, so
I did read Jane Eyre, though. So
this has been your recent obsession.
yes.
Wow. Wild. I'm gonna be floored by that. That's my thinker for the day. It's like
That is
everything is a standalone for Amy.
Everything is a standalone. I'm fully satisfied.
Oh, wild. Cece, could you bring us your next book, please, while I digest that thought?
So the book that I want to talk about is called 84 Charing Cross Road. It's by Helene Hanff. It's actually a collection of letters, and it starts in 1949, and it chronicles the growing friendship between Helene, a freelance writer who is living in New York City, and Frank, a bookseller who is a seller of rare and antiquated books in London. Initially, this relationship starts where Helene is just trying to track down sort of rare copies of her favorite books that she can't find locally. And so she writes to this bookstore that she sees an ad for, and Frank is able to track down a couple of books. And so he writes her back and she writes him back. And it wound up becoming a friendship that crossed continents, spanned multiple decades. And I just think that these letters are really special. I don't know if the market for cozy nonfiction exists necessarily, but that's how I like to describe this. It gives me the same feeling of like 90s Nora Ephron, and it's kind of a weird pick, but it is one of the ultimate books for me that exemplify how incredible reading can be and how many connections can be formed because people love to read, because they want to talk to each other about reading, or they want to be able to help one another find a special book. If you love literary things, if you love connect over so much time and space because they love reading and love being able to talk about it together, I would absolutely recommend 84 Charing Cross. And Helene is, like I said, a writer, so she has other work you can check out. This is usually accompanied by a short story she wrote about her eventually visiting London and just how that was also inspired by her love of reading and literature and this friendship. So I want more people to read this book. Check it out if you are curious.
Oh, I love this immediately as a concept, and I'm with you. I would absolutely adore cozy nonfiction as a genre because maybe I'd read a little more nonfiction that way, or I would have less of a jarring experience with my nonfiction if it wasn't all, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, what a treat. Okay, Carmen. Now are you ready for your last pick? I didn't
I've
forget.
arrived with my final pick. So like Cece, I chose a nonfiction book, and this one is more contemporary. It's called That Librarian by Amanda Jones, and the subtitle of the book is The Fight Against Book Banning in America. And this is Amanda's story as a librarian who back in 2022 went before her local school board and dared to tell them not to ban a book. She lives in a very, very small town that she grew up in and still lives in to this day in Louisiana. And she knows everyone in her parish. And she was harassed, doxxed. She went through the full gamut of everything while everyone to her face was very kind. Amanda herself is a librarian. And I think what she did in this book is demonstrate how librarians physically stand between us and our First Amendment rights to have access to books in libraries. That is something that is protected. That is something in Florida that has been overturned. They're saying that it is government speech in Florida, and it's where I live, and I'm very freaked out by that. I think that not only is this Amanda's story of her perseverance, it's her story of what she did. It includes like the text of what she read aloud at that 2022 meeting. And so it's also, I think, they use the word, I think, manifesto to describe it, but really you could look at it as this is how you fight a book ban no matter where you live. This book made me cry. Just winning awards and her megaphone to the world just seems to be getting louder and louder. I know what she went through in 2022. Like, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but it's enabled her to make her voice heard very loudly and to be a very loud advocate as well as inspiration for people who want to learn to fight book bans, because book bans are fought at your local level against friends, neighbors, people maybe that you've known your whole life. And I think that that's something that this captures that no amount of data points or anything about bans will capture. So a wonderful read supporting a wonderful person. And then if you've heard of the Librarians documentary, she's actually in the Librarians documentary, which is a modern history of banning. It's still kind of at the festivals and they're doing some showings. They're starting to do more showings around the country. Supposedly it's going to be released in PBS in January, but it interviews Amanda along with a number of other librarians from Florida and Texas that are also fighting. So yeah, librarians are my heroes, and this book and that documentary are really great. Thanks, in my opinion.
Oh, Amanda is incredible. And you're absolutely right, Carmen. It's that, like, that book brings you to reckon with that you don't know who you're going to have to fight against to protect the freedom to read. Like, that's the reality. I mean, death threats, name calling, you know, she got everything. She's a school librarian. And I think this was also the moment for me that it was kind of like that eye-opening moment where you're so used to hearing talk about book bans being at the school level, and she was at a public library meeting. Like, she was going against the like a ban that was being proposed at the public library. And that to me is so, it's the flip of what I'm used to seeing over the years, or of what we typically think of book banning in America. And that, like, she still like lives completely totally fine in her school existence, but then the moment she stepped out publicly for where I usually think is like the safer space, and it was just so odd to see this is kind of like the marker in the shifting tides of like book bans in America, of just like this started, and then it was so obviously the attack on public libraries started as well. So, oh, well, to end us on I think that ends us on a very thoughtful note, but I'd also like to ask you all for a very happy note. Do you have a favorite public library memory, or a memory that comes to mind when you think public library?
Can I go first?
Please.
Okay, first of all, last night I went to the Chicago Public Library Foundation's annual awards, and I got to see Jose Olivares, and he recited a new poem that he just wrote, and it's very, very good. Can't wait for everyone to hear that poem from him. And I also got to see Percival Everett in conversation, and he's just phenomenal. So that was just fantastic night. And the whole time I was there, I was reflecting on like my experience with libraries and just like my relationship to libraries. And I really realized that like my hometown, Louisiana Public Library set me on the path that really like turned me into who I am today. Because when I was 11, 12, they had a youth film festival that kids got to submit their films to. And I had made a music video to Taylor Swift's Mary song, using my Sims. I had like screen recorded my
Nice.
Sims and made a music video about it. And I submitted it to that film festival and I won the Viewer's Choice Award. And that really ignited a passion for like filmmaking for me, to the point that I went to film school. Like my background is in film. And because of my film school, I got into the marketing work that I do. And like the video creation that I do is my influencing. So like really, if my public library had not had this programming, because we always talk about the availability of books, but like the programming is also so influential. And if they hadn't had that, I was just like, I don't know who I would be right now.
Love that.
You saying that, Meara, made me think of my own moment that like brings me to today. At some point, Cuyahoga County Public Library did a conversation with Joyce McDonald for the book Swallowing Stones. And it was like a whole lead up in the summer where they gave all of us the book, and like we had physical copies we were reading and they were ours to keep. And, all of us like teens went and sat in the room, and she at some point started taking questions and raised my hand. I don't even remember what I asked, but when we got to the signing line, she was like, wow. And what she wrote in the book was something along the lines of, always keep thinking of amazing questions. And then I look at myself sitting here now where I get to do the same thing. And it's the library that does that. And now for all of our touring events, I am sometimes called on to be one of their hosts for the In Conversation With part. So it's that very beautiful journey of like, what won't the library do? Ooh, fun to think of. Fun to think of all those little moments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely was full circle for me as well. I was thinking, there's two things that come to mind with your memories. Like, one is that Mayor Pete Buttigieg did a book signing at our local library, and it was very fun to see him and his husband Chasten talking about their work and what they were doing. And so on a local level, that's like one of my favorite like signings that I ever got to be part of. But on a like more personal level, I think, when I started my work, it really started because I went to the library and I was trying to figure out how to make ends meet because our family was struggling so much financially. And I started checking out Depression era cookbooks and getting really into how did like they manage home economics in lean seasons. And that's how I started my business, is that I was really inspired by women who were stretching money in such unusual ways. And I just felt like these were skills that, back then, like 2008 recession, were so impactful. That's how I was able to really take off with my career. And so I really attribute the library and all the inspiration I was able to access on those shelves, and the women that came before me who were sharing their own stories that lived on those shelves. It's really crazy how, when you think about it, how the library plays such a big part in where I ended up career-wise. Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
so
like,
beautiful.
it's so like I wouldn't even think to like go to the library to like find that knowledge, you know? Like it's so like smart that you thought of that. And as I was sitting here being like gobsmacked that you even like had that consideration, it made me think of this quote that I literally saw last night. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. Don't know how true it is, but it's that one where he says, the only thing you absolutely have to know is where the library is.
It's true.
Oh, it is true.
Yeah.
Because everything else is there.
Right. Once you get there, you have safety, you have resources. Mm.
So I recently, Amy mentioned coming full circle, and I think last season I talked about, I vividly recall getting my library card with my mom and talking about going full circle. My mom, as an adult, hasn't had a library card, and when I realized that, I recently took her to get her library card. So I might cry, but like it was like this very full circle thing. My mom's 84 years old, and like her health is declining. She's physically declining, and I caretake for her. And so, like, what I'll do, because she gets really tired, like, I make her run errands with me so she gets out of the house. And sometimes she's like, I don't feel like running errands with you. They have Spanish newspapers in the library, so I leave her in the library and I give her the Spanish newspapers and she reads them while I like go run errands. And then I come back and pick her up and then take her home. So I feel like in a lot of ways, oh my God, I am crying. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's enabled me to recapture this relationship and this, like, be able to do for my mom what she did for me. Even though the
Mhm.
library was really doing all the heavy lifting, I think for me, it's become this, like this really like beautiful, touching moment of, like having changes in your responsibility with your parents, but also like, shared love of reading. Like we'll both sit in the library sometimes, both just like read and look at books for a little while. And it's like this very nice, quiet time. And I had that as a kid sort of, and I haven't had it
Mhm.
this whole time. And now as an adult, I'm having it. And it's very special. And feel very lucky to have that space, that my mom's able to go, be comfortable, feel safe, and I can like leave her there and then come back and get her when I'm done.
But
Aw,
that's so beautiful.
I'm
I mean,
crying.
right, I know. I'm sitting here
Now
like,
we're all
hold it
crying.
together. It's so meaningful to see that full circle moment, but also, right, like safety means so many things. Like, she is okay for an hour while you are off somewhere, but also not that like not in the sense of like, oh, burden or placeholder. Like she is welcome. She like this is her space to take up space. She can sit there with the Spanish language newspaper.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, and she, she physically feels safe and like,
Yes.
and everything is accessible because she has like mobility issues and things. Like she
Mhm.
feels like the levels of safety that libraries provide. I saw an interview with a librarian who is like uh, their whole job at the San Francisco Public Library is to make sure that like the unhoused
Mhm.
people, like get whatever resources they need and stuff. And it's like libraries truly are one of these last vestiges of safe third spaces for everyone. And that's why it's so important, I think, to protect them. I mean, it's for everyone. And there's so
Yeah.
little of that left that's, for all intents and purposes free, right? Like you're not paying an admission or having to buy a book to be there. It's like you can just go spend as much time as you want during hours of operation. It's a beautiful,
Right.
beautiful thing that we are, all those spaces are being taken away from us. And, that's one of my motivating factors, fighting for libraries for sure.
Absolutely. And like you said, truly free, like one of the last spaces that is actually there is no cost of admission. And I know some angry person is saying my tax dollars, but like, no. Like these are resources. These are resources for everyone. And like the spirit of the library is what we need to return to, the like actually being willing to help someone. I mean, it's the like, oh, someone from as simple as like looking for a book recommendation all the way to like, I don't know how to use the copier, all the way to just like walking up and saying, thank you, librarian, for being here today and dealing with whatever you had to deal with. I see you and I appreciate you.
If not to push another thing on this podcast, but
Please.
they are going to post the speeches that were given at the Foundation Awards last night. And so you will hear from Jose, you will hear from Percival, and you'll hear from a few other awardees. And the way that they spoke about the value of the library as resistance to fascism was just phenomenal. They're posting the video on November 5th. I highly recommend if you just like want to see something that is just going to like touch your spirit and like energize you in the fight for the library. I highly recommend going to watch it because literally everything that came out of all of those authors' mouths was phenomenal, as I'm sure you can imagine.
So we'll have to check out the Chicago Public Library's website to see when those go live.
Yeah.
November 5th. Keep
on
an eye
YouTube.
out. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Everyone who's seeing this will already have what they need.
Oh, right.
Yay.
Just go over to their YouTube channel from our
Yep.
YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have lost Cece to the perils of technology, as is wont to happen sometimes, but I will make sure I get out of her at some point a library love memory that we'll share in a future episode. But thank you for all being here today and for sharing with me.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Joe. This
giving
is amazing.
Us the space
lovely.
to
Thank you
celebrate
so much.
librarians and libraries.
I will,
Yeah.
know, if there is not a space to celebrate libraries, I'm dead. So yeah, that's,
Slay.
exactly. We're going to stay shouting and stay screaming and celebrating. Well, thank you all for joining me. This is where we'll awkwardly transition to the next part of the episode, which is me doing an outro. Hey friends, Joe from the future here. I just wanted to share with you all Cece's favorite library memory. Thank you for your understanding. We know, technology fails us sometimes. Sometimes internet cuts out, but this memory, just so excited to share with you. So here it is now, and then afterwards we'll head over to me doing the outro.
So I mentioned earlier I was homeschooled, but I actually wound up going to public school somewhere around like age 14 onwards. And my high school library wound up being somewhere that I spent a lot of my time alone and also with my friends. I remember my friends and I used to try to eat lunch as quickly as possible so that we could get to the library and spend as much time there as possible in sort of the lunch period remaining. So it immediately became a time where a library was another safe space. But something that I've kind of reflected on more about that experience in that place, especially as I've gotten older, is the librarians who actually were at our school library and how much they knew about us as people, how much they cared about us as students, as individuals. And there's this one memory that sticks out to me, and it's maybe minor, but it was one of my many mornings doing homework at one of the tables in the library, and one of our librarians called me over to the main desk, and she showed me all of the books that had just been received, and they'd finished like packaging them, and she wanted me to have first pick of the books before they got put on the shelf. I don't know, there are so many other ways that those women supported us and cared about us, and so many ways that they influenced me and my love of libraries and books to continue to grow. But that moment in particular has just always made me feel so seen, and it just remains special later on that it meant so much to me at that time to have those women care and support what I loved, which was reading.
What a beautiful conversation. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling all the warm bookish feelings after this one. Libraries truly have an incredible way of connecting us to stories, to community, and sometimes to the people we're meant to become. A huge thank you to our guests from segment 1, Terah Shelton Harris, Eva Jurczyk, TJ Nelson, and Jenn McKinlay for sharing their stories and for sharing their love of libraries. And of course, thank you to Amy, Carmen, Cece, and Meara for those cozy book recommendations that keep our shelves and our hearts full. Now make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode where we're blasting off into the stars for a science fiction double feature with Alex Segura, Daniel H. Wilson, and Ken Liu, plus a rocket ship full of out-of-this-world book recs. Don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, leave a 5-star review if you're enjoying your time in the lounge, and check out the Libby App YouTube channel for our video content. If you've got questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, you can always reach me via email, bookloungebyLibby@overdrive.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.